Hanukkah occurs at the very darkest time of the year, and we are so afraid of the darkness. And we are fascinated with light as a flame and as a symbol. We crave light as the days get darker, celebrating Hanukkah, our festival of lights. So we kindle the Hanukkah lights for 8 nights, creating more and more radiance, a symbol of miracles. The candles' beautiful lights illumine our hearts and our homes, giving us courage, comfort, and hope. I am going to share with you Isaac Bashevis Singer's wonderful Hanukkah story called The Power of Light. It is a tale of despair and bravery and the resilient spirit of the Jewish people in times of darkness. During World War II, after the Nazis had bombed and burned the Warsaw Ghetto, a boy and a girl were hiding in one of the ruins. David, 14 years old, and his friend Rebecca, 13. It was winter and bitter cold outside. For weeks, Rebecca had not left the dark, partially collapsed cellar that was their hiding place. But every few days, David would go out to search for food. David sometimes found stale bread, cans of food, or whatever else had been buried. Making his way through the ruins was dangerous, but if he and Rebecca did not want to die from hunger, he had to take the risk. That day was one of the coldest. Rebecca sat on the ground wrapped in all the garments she possessed, unable to get warm. David had left many hours before, and Rebecca listened in the darkness for the sound of his return, knowing that if he did not come back, nothing remained to her but death. Suddenly, she heard the sound of David returning, and David called, "Rebecca, Rebecca, I found a treasure." What kind of treasure? Cheese, potatoes, dried mushrooms, and a package of candy. And I have another surprise for you. What surprise? Later. Let's eat. They were both so hungry. Ravenously, they ate the frozen potatoes, the mushrooms, and part of the cheese. They each had one piece of candy. Then Rebecca asked again, "What is the surprise?" "Rebecca, today is the first day of Hanukkah, and I found a candle and some matches." "Hanukkah tonight?" "Yes." "Oh my God." "I am going to bless the Hanukkah candle," David said. He lit a match, and there was light in their darkness. David lit the candle and pronounced the benediction, and Rebecca said, "Amen." They had both lost their families, but the light of the candle brought peace into their souls. That glimmer of light, surrounded by so many shadows, seemed to say without words, "Evil has not yet taken complete dominion. A spark of hope is still left." For some time, David and Rebecca had thought about escaping from Warsaw, but Rebecca kept delaying their departure. It would be easier in the summer, she often said, but David knew that in their predicament, they had little chance of lasting until then. Somewhere in the forest, there were the young partisans who fought the Nazi invaders. David wanted to reach them. Now, by the light of the Hanukkah candle, Rebecca suddenly felt renewed courage. She said, "David, let's leave." "When?" "When you think it's the right time," she answered. "The right time is now," David said. "I have a plan." David explained the details to Rebecca. It was more than risky. The Nazis had enclosed the ghetto with barbed wire and posted guards armed with machine guns on the surrounding roofs. At night, searchlights lit up all possible exits from the destroyed ghetto. But in his wanderings through the ruins, David had found an opening to a sewer, which he thought might lead to the other side. David told Rebekah that their chances of remaining alive were slim. They could drown in the dirty water or freeze to death. Also, the sewers were full of hungry rats. But Rebekah agreed to take the risk. To remain in the cellar for the winter would mean certain death. When the Hanukkah light began to sputter and flicker before going out, David and Rebekah gathered their few belongings. She packed the remaining food in a kerchief, and David took his matches and a piece of lead pipe for a weapon. David and Rebekah were soon on their way through the ruins. They came to passages so narrow they had to crawl on hands and knees. But the food they had eaten and the joy the Hanukkah candle had awakened in them gave them the courage to continue. After some time, David found the entrance to the sewer. Luckily, the sewage had frozen, and it seemed that the rats had left because of the extreme cold. Suddenly, they stopped in their tracks. From above, they could hear the clanging of a trolley car. They had reached the other side of the ghetto. All they needed now was to find a way to get out of the sewer and to leave the city as quickly as possible. Many miracles seemed to happen that Hanukkah night. Because the Nazis were afraid of enemy planes, they had ordered a complete blackout. Because of the bitter cold, there were fewer Gestapo guards. David and Rebekah managed to leave the sewer, stealing out of the city without being caught. And at dawn, they reached the forest. Even though the partisans were not very far from Warsaw, it took David and Rebekah a week to reach them. They walked at night and hid during the days. In one village, they encountered a Jewish partisan who had come to get food for his group. He belonged to the Haganah, an organization that sent men from Israel to rescue Jewish refugees from the Nazis in occupied Poland. This young man brought David and Rebekah to the other partisans who roamed the forest. It was the last day of Hanukkah, and that evening the partisans lit 8 candles. Some of them played dreidel on the stump of an oak tree, while others kept watch. From the day David and Rebekah met the partisans, their life became like a tale in a storybook. They joined more and more refugees who all had but one desire: to settle in the land of Israel. To reach their destination, they had to cross Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Yugoslavia. Somewhere at the seashore in Yugoslavia, in the middle of the night, a small boat manned by a Haganah crew waited for them, and all the refugees with their meager belongings were packed into it. This all happened silently and in great secrecy because the Nazis occupied Yugoslavia. But their dangers were far from over. Even though it was spring, the sea was stormy, and the boat was too small for such a long trip. Nazi planes spied the boat and tried without success to sink it with bombs. They also feared the Nazi submarines which were lurking in the depths. There was nothing the refugees could do besides pray to God, and this time God seemed to hear their prayers because they managed to land safely. The Jews of Israel greeted them with love. They were the first refugees who had reached the Holy Land, and they were offered all the help and comfort that could be given. Rebekah and David found relatives in Israel who accepted them with open arms, and although they had become quite emaciated, they were basically healthy and recovered quickly. When Rebekah was 18, She and David were married. I know all this because David and Rebekah told me their story on a Hanukkah evening about 8 years later in their house in Ramat Gan, a suburb of Tel Aviv. The Hanukkah candles were burning and Rebekah was frying potato pancakes served with applesauce for all of us. David and I were playing dreidel with their little son, Menachem Eliezer. David told me that this large wooden dreidel was the same one the partisans had played with on that Hanukkah evening in the forest in Poland. Rebekah said to me, if it had not been for that little candle David brought to our hiding place, we wouldn't be sitting here today. That glimmer of light awakened in us a hope and strength we didn't know we possessed. We'll give the dreidel to Menachem Eliezer when he is old enough to understand what we went through and how miraculously we were saved. Isaac Bashevis Singer's beautiful story shows us the power of light, that Hanukkah is the holiday of hope in times of fear and darkness. The Hanukkah lights brighten our souls and remind us of God's presence. One of our Hanukkah prayers, Al Hanissim, celebrates the light that is God in our history and in our present world. We give thanks for the miracles in our lives, for the times God has been present for us, for the victories and for the battles God waged for our people in the past and today. Hanissim ve'al hapurkan ve'al hakfurot ve'al hashuvot ve'al hamilchamot she'asita lavotenu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh.